Good evening, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to another episode of A Word with Pastor Webb. I'm your host, Pastor Webb, and we have a very special guest this evening, Mr. George Tinsley, author, father, businessman, entrepreneur, coach, and friend. Please help me to salute and celebrate my friend and brother, George Tinsley. Mr. Tinsley, how you doing today?
Doing great, Pastor Webb. It's my pleasure and honor to be on your show today, and hopefully we are able to communicate something that will benefit the audience out there. So
right.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for being on the show. We're not going to prolong the time. Rumor has it that you was raised with a silver spoon in your mouth. Tell me, what's your story? How did you grow up?
Well, it's a long way from that story, and I like to kind of characterize it as turning obstacles into opportunity, my tagline there. But I was adopted by a lady that was 65 years old, had one leg, couldn't read and write. She was a babysitter that kept me while my mother was working. She kept other kids also in the neighborhood. And something happened there. I mean, there's a number of different stories, but the end result was that my mother didn't come back. She kept me, raised me until she passed when I was 13 years old. We moved around the city and outside of the city, so don't know if my mother came back and she couldn't find us, what the story was, but that's how it was. So we basically lived in a one-room facility. Most of the time we lived in an attic with a relative outside of the city in Harrods Creek, Prospect, Kentucky, and started school in back in Louisville, Kentucky, and so we lived off a $65 check that she received, Social Security check that she received.
Wow.
She couldn't write. She'd make an X on the check. I would sign her name and take it to the grocery store, neighborhood grocery store, where we had a bill, running bill tab, and so that's the way we existed.
So did you know your dad?
Well, I met my mother and father when as a matter of fact, a month or so after we had gotten married. My wife and I had gotten married in April 1972, May. So I met them in May, and found my father first because my father knew my wife's family, and he just happened to come by during Derby time, and it was a surprise. I didn't know anything about this, and so that's where I actually met him. And then a week or two later, I was able to find my mother.
Wow.
So after we'd gotten married, and thinking about children and so forth, I wanted to I'd heard a lot of things about mother, father.
Okay.
Father lived in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mother lived in Indianapolis, and of course I lived in Louisville.
Okay. Now tell me how you got started with KFC and then becoming a franchise owner.
Well, as I said, I taught school, coached, and coaching was what I really wanted to do. I wanted to give back to youngsters the way that someone helped me. And so when busing started in 1976 in Kentucky, it got pretty hectic. I got bused because I was the low on the token pole for seniority at the school, Mill High School, where I actually went. And I got moved to Southern High School, which was right in the heart of the where all of the riots and everything was going on.
The hood?
No. This was in the white section.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of the black students were being bused to the white section. So I guess where the great quarterback Phil Simms was the school there. So I went there teaching and coaching, and so I had to drive through all of these picketing and all of this stuff, honk your horn. I had a little old raggedy car that I actually had to wind up carrying my gun on my head to a couple times. That's how nerve-wracking it was. So only a couple of times, but so when that happened, we actually won a state championship in high school basketball. We won I taught for 3 years. We'd actually won 3 tracks. I was a track coach also.
Right.
state championships. Basketball, we were runner-up in the state. We won the state. And then in the senior year, we had great athletes, Daryl Griffith and Bobby Turner and Jeff Mack. Those were outstanding guys. Daryl Griffith's Dr. Duncanstein.
Right.
So we had a real success there. I was assistant coach. So that's when I decided, hey, I can't, I'm through with this. And I was only making like close to 10,000.
Wow.
Teaching. I started off at 5 and had made it up to 10 in coaching and supplemental, pay. And so my wife Sarita had left the school system. She was a school teacher also. She was a year ahead of me, teaching a year ahead of me. So we'd gotten married. So a combination of our two salaries, we were only like 18,000, I think it was, and thinking about a family. So I said, it's time for a change. And a friend of mine who I'd played basketball with, both in the ABA, said, why don't you come out and interview for me? He worked at KFC as he was in the kind of head of minority program and engineering, architectural stuff. Right. So I went out and interviewed, and going through this whole circle of folks in the interviews, the human resource department kind of fell in love with my resume and also being a local guy and having the teaching background. They were just opening a training school. Wow. And so they offered me a job as a training instructor, which was $16,500. Well, at the time, I'd interviewed and been selected as an FBI agent, and the FBI was paying $14,500. They were asking all the agents to retire at $45,000. So it opened up an opportunity for you. Just had to have 3 years of supervisory experience. So a friend of mine, we applied and got selected, passed it, and a background check and everything. I mean, that's something awesome that they do there. So I was going to become an agent, going to Washington D.C. for training and so forth. But fortunate, KFC offered me this job as a training instructor, and I took it. We were supposed to be going to Schaumburg, Illinois, to open up. But they decided to keep the training school there in Louisville, Kentucky. And so I took that job, and lo and behold, I wound up working right beside the colonel. Wow. Which was, you talk about intimidation. My territory was from Kentucky to Hawaii again. Right. And so at one point I was up about 45, 50,000 a year at that time, and so that was back in the 70s, which was quite a bit of money at that time. So definitely above average, and felt real good, and really started thinking about franchising a little bit more. I actually thought about it when I was working with the franchisees, because these guys are millionaires, and here I am teaching them, So I'm saying, hey. So I went and interviewed for a Burger King franchise, and actually got an offer to become a Burger King franchisee with what they call the BFL, which is a Burger King franchise lease program, and decided that might be what I wanted to do. Went back and talked to KFC about it. They said, no, you can't do that. They offered me another promotion down in Jacksonville to become a franchise manager, which meant I would be the liaison between the corporate and the franchise restaurants. So I took that opportunity, and Sarita got a job down in Jacksonville. I was a general manager of a radio station down there. And so we went down there, and about 3 years working with franchisees all over the Southeast, from Atlanta down to St. Augustine. And then Jesse Jackson had, with Operation Push, had pushed a number of different brands, or companies, brands as well, to open up the minority program, where they were helping minorities get into, didn't have $1 million liquid in the bank and so forth. So that's when that happened. There were 2 black franchisees that came into the South. Prior to that, there were really only 1 or 2 black franchisees in the entire system. So two came into the South, and I started working with them, helping them get set up, and then got an opportunity myself to become a franchisee in Arbondale. So that's how I actually moved from in the corporate. I worked for them for 8 years, and then when the program opened up, got an opportunity to become a franchisee.
Okay.
There.
So how many franchises have you owned and own presently?
Well, from a franchise and contractual agreement standpoint, we have actually KFC, Wendy's, TGI Fridays, Chili's, Comfy Cow have been our primary franchise agreements, original agreements. Now we're also in partnership with HMS Hosts at the airports, where we actually operate together, but we're not the actual. In the airports, it's licenses, not franchise agreements, but it's very similar. They usually last the length of the contract. So a contract may be 8 years, contract may be 7 years, contract may be 10 years, and then again it may roll over. So in that situation, we probably have about 30. Different dual agreements in Miami and in Louisville and in Tampa, and we have our own brand also. Several brands that we have of our own that we have in different locations as well.
I know you talked to me earlier about TGI Fridays making $9 million a year.
Yeah. TGI Fridays, we started off as probably one of our most successful stories, and KFC, of course, is a successful story. Also, it's been a top restaurant almost the full 36 years that we've been in business there, going in 37. But the TGI Fridays that we were speaking of is a concept that we entered into that was projected to do about $2 million the first year. But we actually went in and first year did $3.5 million. Each year we kind of grew to right up to $9 million, and we were top TGI Fridays in the nation for 9 years in a row.
Wow.
Where we the top volume we had was $9 million. So that closed in 2016 because of the completely remodeling of the Tampa airport. So. But it was really a successful business there. Yeah.
I read somewhere that you was inducted into 6 Hall of Fame. Talk me through that.
Well, there's a combination of athletic and business. From the business and community, it's a Smoketown Hall of Fame, which is where I grew up. Muhammad Ali and several other athletes, and I think my recognition was from both athletic and also business there in the community. So, and my high school, I've been inducted into 2 Hall of Fames there, the Athletic Hall of Fame, and also the Alumni Hall of Fame, Kentucky Wesleyan Hall of Fame there as an athlete and also as an alumni. And the Small College Hall of Fame we've been inducted into, and the Black College Hall of Fame for Kentucky, also. So those are, and recently I got inducted into the Softball Hall of Fame for here in the state of Florida.
Wow.
Senior softball.
All right, so I can call you Mr. Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well.
What has been your biggest loss, business-wise and personal?
Well, biggest loss personally, I'll start there, has been my daughter. We lost this year, and so that was really impactful in that we knew that she had a terminal disease, and she fought through it for 13 years, and had finally succumbed to it, but. That's probably the biggest loss that we've had, and obviously the most recent. So that happened in April. So we're still
Yes, morning.
working through that.
Yes.
From a business standpoint, our first, the third KFC that we opened, that was probably the most traumatic because I never failed before in business. We'd had two very successful restaurants for about 5 years, and then have that one to actually fail. But after that fail, my feelings are always, in order to be a winner, you got to lose.
Right.
And so when that restaurant failed, we came back, and the Auburndale store caught on fire and burned down. So we rebuilt it and doubled the volume there. So that was a tremendous success. It's a story in itself. And then, of course, we had a TGI Fridays in Lakeland that we had there for 2.5 years. It failed. So out of that experience, opened up opportunities in the Tampa airport out on Airside C, where we it was a tremendous success. It was a group of restaurants that we had projected to do probably around 7-8 million that wound up doing 30 million there for those for annualizing. So it was a tremendous success there.
All right. How has God played a role in your success?
My life, I wouldn't be where I am today without God being in my life. And, the lady who raised me, she had this big radio that she would always play church music on it. She would start shouting, and she would be crying and so forth. And I knew nothing. She would make me go to church, the Green Street Baptist Church, which was in walking distance from where we are.
Right.
But I was ashamed to go to church because I didn't have the clothes to wear. I was ashamed. Kids will tease you and so forth. And so there was always a somewhat of an imbalance there. But to hear her feel the presence of God and in her life and what it was doing, it always kind of, it was instilled in me. I wasn't what I would call every Sunday going to church, but I got there and was raised in the church, and so with being adopted and going through what we went through, the two of us, and in these one rooms, and people in the community looking out for us, feeling sorry for us, and I think personally being able to keep a smile on my face through all of that, and having the kind of personality that interacted with the females, pretty much, in the ladies in the area, because they looked out for me. I think that God just has blessed me.
Amen.
And my wife, and she comes from both her fathers are ministers and so forth. So religion, God has just been a big part of everything about us.
Amen. Now, what advice would you give to a young person who want to start their own business?
Well, I would say that start the minute that you feel that you want to do this and you want to be, you want to dedicate the time and the energy to put into it. I'd start talking to people who are in business and find out as much as you can from them. Not only the bad side, a lot of people ask about the negatives, but the good side.
Right.
Understanding that it's going to take hard work. Even if it comes to working free for someone.
Right.
Definitely an education is extremely important. As much of an accounting background as you can get, if accounting is where you want to go, definitely that certainly helps out, because it's all about the numbers, making the numbers work. Just start pursuing the area that you want to go into. From a franchising standpoint, I like franchising. I advise franchising as a start to get in because the method is already proven. Definitely to look at some of the top tier franchisees to get involved with. Yum Brands certainly is one with KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and Habit Burger, and just about all of the top tier brands. They have very rigid programs that the guidance is extremely strong, and you've got to understand when you go and you get involved that it's not Tinsley's or it's not your brand, it's their brand, and you have to work with their rules, but add your personality and your business skill set to make it work even better. So there's a lot to go into it. As I mentioned earlier, most on the restaurant side, most businesses fail in the first 3 years.
Wow.
Of course, there's other types of franchising,
right,
that you can get into and that have a better track record. Saving your money, putting money up, investing, making sure you're capitalized
right,
in getting into business, because most businesses fail because of being undercapitalized. So you got to have the money to get in. Getting involved with partners is I always say you don't need a partner unless you really need them.
Right.
And then if you really need them, you got to make sure that you go into that relationship understanding the pitfalls possibly of it. So having a good lawyer, having a good CPA,
right,
doing a business plan over at least the first 5 years, and understanding the what ifs. If this doesn't happen, this does happen, and so forth. Somebody's going to have to do the work, and it's going to take a good leadership to get there. So having a great understanding and partnership, if you're bringing in a partner, working together, then that's key. Our first business, the TGI Fridays, when I went into that, I had a business partner that we had roles.